What if the real cradle of humanity wasn't Africa at all, but America? Now, if even Thomas Jefferson believed the first people left America to populate Asia, then who's really rewriting history, and what does this imply for Black indigenous identities in America? Go deep as possible.
To say humanity began in Africa was a way of othering. It pushed the root of humanity far from American soil. Why?
Guys, the comment under my last video, wild. Someone actually said Africa isn't the motherland, that America is. Like, wait, what? I actually grew up hearing that Africa is the cradle of mankind, but now people are saying Africa might have come from America, and it's not just a random person saying it. A few Black Americans are genuinely debating this. Some even went as far as asking ChatGPT for clarification. You all, the debate has officially gone international and digital. So I decided, let's not just talk about them, let's actually hear from them. I've pulled together a few videos of Black Americans on both sides of the argument, those who believe they are not from Africa and those who say we are all connected. Now, before we dive in, a quick shout out to all the creators featured. Credit to you all. Now, let's take a listen, and I'll be right back after this.
Modern day Africa is not the motherland. Even though the colonizers lied and told you that it was, I'm sorry, it's not. Also, all of the food crops that those of you in Africa enjoy, the fufu, the cassava, the plantain, the corn, the beans, everything that you enjoy in Africa, guess where it came from? It came from America. South America to be exact. So again, sorry to have to be the one to bust your bubble, but modern day Africa is not the motherland. Africa is not the motherland. The colonizers lied to you. They dumped you people in Africa.
Yeah, I'm American.
Okay, explain.
So my most recent descendants are literally from Central America and North America, indigenous Black Americans. They have the same color, the same melanin content, but they are not from Africa. I can't name any country in Africa. What I'm saying is that if I take a test right now, I could say some Italian, some German, some Australian up in there, 13% Ghanaian, 19% Nigerian, like who knows and who cares? But what I'm saying is that my immediate ancestors are American.
We Black Americans, we are not the American Indians. We are not the Native Americans. DNA evidence and linguistic evidence ties us to West Africans. It's a fact. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of evidence showing that African Americans did mix in and oftentimes were adopted by Native American tribes during slavery, but that doesn't make us the Native Americans. If you take a DNA test, it's going to show for the majority of African Americans that the large majority of our DNA is from West Africa. The rest, about 25%, is usually from Europe, and then a small fraction is Native American blood. We just got to face the facts. We're from Africa. Accept it. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. The slave trade happened. And yes, we are from West Africa.
DNA ancestry kits sold you a dream, but the real science says otherwise. Now, if genealogists and geneticists trace ancient bloodlines through records and biological evidence, why are we trusting consumer tests that can't even agree on your identity from one company to the next? Go deep as possible.
DNA ancestry kits sold us a fairy tale stitched together with commercial packaging and sprinkled with science-sounding fluff. Let's rip off the barcode and decode what's really going on, because the truth is far deeper and way more ancient than a plastic tube in an app. DNA ancestry kits, the illusion of precision. Consumer DNA kits like Ancestry DNA or 23andMe use algorithms to compare fragments of your genetic code against a reference population. But here's the kicker. Those reference populations are often incomplete, biased, or modern. If your ancestral DNA isn't in their limited sample groups, you get labeled as broadly African, unassigned, or worse, misidentified completely. The results vary from company to company because they each use different data sets and different methods of categorizing ethnicity, which is often based more on geopolitical borders than biological lineage. That's why your heritage could change from 40% Nigerian to 12% Ghanaian overnight, just from a software update. Imagine your bloodline shifting like an iPhone OS upgrade. That's not science, that's marketing. Real genealogy is built on records and receipts. Genealogists don't just rely on DNA. They use land records, marriage certificates, war enlistments, oral traditions, ancient maps, surnames, ship logs, tribal registries, and church documents to trace lineage. Real geneticists and anthropologists use bones, cranial morphology, dental patterns, and mtDNA from ancient remains. This is biological anthropology, not consumer-grade genetic entertainment. Why trust a system that wasn't built for you? Most of these DNA kits were built with European populations in mind. They're calibrated to tell a European where in Europe they may be from, not to help melanated people track ancestral migrations through Kemet, Mali, the Olmecs, or the Mississippian Moors. Ask yourself, why do they never tell you you're from ancient Ethiopia, Axum, Nubia, or Moors? Why don't they mention migrations out of America into Africa, like some early expeditionary anthropologists discovered? Why is there no nuance when it comes to African tribal nations, yet dozens of labels for European ethnicity? Because the narrative is still being controlled. Hack Your DNA holds frequencies, not just ethnic pie charts. Beyond the surface level percentages, DNA is a vibrational language. Your ancestors live within your epigenetics. Trauma, memory, survival tactics, wisdom, it's all encoded in your cellular memory. But these kits reduce your story to a pie chart. They don't measure your spiritual inheritance, your bloodline of resistance, or your connection to ancient cultures wiped off the maps. They don't reveal that you could be the descendant of mound builders in North America, sea kings in West Africa, or Moorish navigators who mapped the stars long before Europe came out of its dark age. Controlled science, controlled identity. Most of the DNA companies are for-profit entities partnered with pharmaceuticals, law enforcement, and insurance industries. What you think is about identity is really about data monetization. They sell your DNA. They create racial categories for profit. They feed into a mainstream narrative that supports modern borders, not ancestral migrations. They give you an identity that's pre-approved, not primordial. Real lineage is found through the spirit and the paper trail. If you want the real story of who you are, study treaties, historical maps, and ancient ethnographic records. Research land patents, tribal affiliations, freedmen roles, and surname etymologies. Connect with your elders, oral histories, and cultural rituals. Consumer DNA can't tell you your real name, your real tribe, your original language, your cosmology. That's something you decode through spiritual, historical, and scholarly work, not a cotton swab.
The evidence is there, the history's there. I've been to Africa, I've seen the dungeons, I've read the stories, I've read the history. There's no need to really argue because it is what it is, you know? It's just wild how social media has allowed so many rampant lies and misinformation and non-facts to proliferate.
Y'all don't get mad when a Jamaican say they're just Jamaican or a Haitian say they're just a Haitian. They don't be like they African Jamaican or African Haitian. So why do y'all get mad when we say we're just American?
I understand. We searching for identity. We want to have a claim to this American continent. And we do have a claim to this American continent. We shed our blood slaving to make this place what it is.
Stop trying to Africanize my people. Stop trying to Africanize my people. We are not African. We are not descendants of African. The problem with you guys is there's those of us who have traced our genealogy. We are from North America through and through. You will not Africanize us. I don't care what you said. I don't care about your DNA test. That don't mean shit to me. Do your genealogy. And if you do happen to be African, be a proud descendant of an African. But we ain't African over here, buddy. We is not African over here. We are from North America. Wrap this shit up.
What? So correct me if I'm wrong. Y'all believe that y'all aren't African? So our ancestors were lying? You're telling me that the scholars, our people who did the work, who went to Africa, who sat with scholars, who listened to, whoever did the research, went to the universities, the people who did the work and educated us about where we came from, they were lying? Our ancestors. My great-great-grandmother lied. My great-grandmother lied. Y'all, the proof is in the pudding. Everything about us is African, so I don't understand this whole movement. And then some of y'all be saying that people like me are traitors. I don't understand that either, because why? I I just feel like it's just too much division. At the end of the day, we in the same boat. It don't matter what you call yourself. It don't matter what you call yourself. At the end of the day, we are in the same boat. And I feel like the FBA movement is causing more division.
American slaves, aka black people, are not people that were shipped. Most of them may not be people that were shipped from Africa, right? That would mean that most of them would be prisoners of war. And if you think about this in a historical context, before Europeans discovered America, the common practice when going to war with another nation, after you defeated the country, was to take the leftover citizens of that nation, especially the warriors, and capture them as prisoners of war, right? This was a common practice that you've probably heard of in old European society, right? And if that's the case, then they would do the same thing when they came to Americas and waged war on whoever was here to take the land. So according to the numbers and according to historical context, it would actually make sense that the slaves that we consider to be from Africa were actually slaves of war.
So yeah, we go back to the 1800s, but for real, if your shit say 19 anything, your grandparents got paperwork that say 19 anything. 1900, 1915, 1920. Okay, you may be foundational Black American, but other than that, you're not, baby.
All human beings originated in Africa. If you study human evolution, you'll learn that previous to the species Homo sapiens, there were other types of hominid species. Hominid is another word for human-like. So as Homo sapiens traveled the globe, as we spread across the globe, many times the Homo sapiens actually interbred with other hominid species. So that, coupled with natural evolutionary processes based on environment, caused us to look very different and to have very different features like skin color, hair texture, facial structure, etc. Now, you don't have to believe me. This is all science, and it's all a part of human evolutionary theory.
Thomas Jefferson believed the first inhabitants of Asia actually came from America because they resembled the American Aborigines. So instead of Asians walked across the Beringia into America, it flips it. People went from America into Asia. So with that being said, what if the real cradle of humanity wasn't Africa at all, but America? Now, if even Thomas Jefferson believed the first people left America to populate Asia, then who's really rewriting history, and what does this imply for Black indigenous identities in America? Go deep as possible.
Right, Bay. Let's flip the map and walk this out like a thought experiment. If America is the womb, then the narrative that everything started in Africa isn't just incomplete. It's a carefully maintained rewrite. Jefferson saw that the American Aborigines resembled people across Asia. That resemblance could be read two ways. One, they walked from Asia to America, mainstream theory. Two, they walked from America to Asia, Jefferson's flip. If you zoom out, both sides are really about who gets to claim the title of origin. That title is power. It's ownership of the human story itself. Who's rewriting the story? The out of Africa narrative gained traction in the 19th, 20th century, right when anthropology and racial science were being weaponized. To say humanity began in Africa was a way of othering. It pushed the root of humanity far from American soil. Why? Because admitting America as cradle would mean admitting the so-called Indians weren't just latecomers. They were the first. The melanated peoples of America weren't just a branch of Africa, they were possibly the rootstock. Enslavement, land theft, and reclassification, Negroid, African American, wasn't just about labor. It was about burying the first people in their own house. The rewrite wasn't just about history, it was about identity. If you erase the origin, you erase the inheritance. Implications for Black Indigenous identity. Now think about Black Indigenous Americans today. Identity erasure. By labeling Indigenous Americans as Negroes or Africans, the system rewrote nations into racial categories. Land rights. If you're African by label, your tie to Turtle Island land gets severed legally. Spiritual legacy. The story of Out of Africa strips away the idea that the soil you stand on could be the very cradle of the soul. What Jefferson suggested, and what was later buried, is that the Black Indigenous identity in America isn't just a hybrid of African plus Native. It's a primal root identity that predates the racial categories. If America was the first womb, then Black Indigenous Americans aren't just survivors. They're the living memory of the beginning. The bigger question. So the real mystery isn't, did people leave Africa or America first? It's, who benefits from telling the story one way and erasing the other? Because if the cradle is America, then Black Indigenous people aren't just descendants of slaves or migrants. They are the keepers of the first fire.
Black Americans aren't African. We're American. The continent of Africa is not the motherland. America is. America's way older than the continent of Africa. Why do you think America's all through America is built up and Africa's not? Come on now, you guys got to do your math. Stop listening to these colonizers who told you Africa's the motherland and everybody's African. Come on now, stop. They literally are using the Charles Darwinism theory of everybody evolved from Neanderthals, and they were trying to say that black people were the Neanderthals. That's why everybody traces back to Africa. And it's false. It's bullocks. It's bull crap, right? We know the American lands are way older, way prominent, way more significant than the continent of Africa.
They don't want you to know our ancestors didn't come from Africa. They left the Americas and went there. That's why you will find traces of maize, pyramid building, and flame symbols in Africa that originated here. The traffic was one way, from the Americas out, not the other way in.
Wow, this conversation is getting complicated. But here's the thing, if Africa was doing well politically, economically, socially, I honestly don't think anyone would be ashamed of identifying as African. Let's be honest, success has relatives, but failure is an orphan. Have you noticed? When your cousin suddenly makes it big, let's say he graduates top of his class, buys a car, builds a house, all of a sudden everybody remembers they are related. But when that same cousin is struggling, no one seems to know their last name anymore. That's how Africa feels right now. If the continent was thriving, people wouldn't be arguing about whether they are truly from here or not. But when the world keeps seeing poverty, corruption, and stories of Africans risking their lives to cross oceans just to reach America, it creates shame instead of pride. Now, just watch this.
Africa's annual food import bill is around 50 billion, guys. It's expected to rise to 110 billion by 2025. It's going to double, which means that land is not making any progress, guys. It's not good land. I'm trying to tell y'all, Africa receives the most foreign aid of any continent. You would literally be moving there just for the rest of the world to help you out. You would be a charity case. It's not worth it. Why do you think hundreds of thousands of Africans migrate to the Americas each year? They don't want to be there, y'all. But they want you to go? They want you to be African? They're trying to trade with you so they can get the good land and you can get that land. I keep trying to tell you, even their most significant crops, all are indigenous to the Americas. They would have never had these if it wasn't for America. America literally is saving that continent. You want to be at the continent that saves people? Or you want to be at the continent that receives the most help? 600 million people lacking access to electric, y'all. This is wild. Even the access to fresh water, clean and safe drinking water, y'all. Why do y'all think this is? Let me show you. Out of all the lands, Africa's in last place with 9% of the world's fresh water. They can't be the motherland when they don't have the food or water to support this theory. Remember, the out of Africa theory is a theory. I'm debunking it right in front of your eyes.
Interestingly, a few Black Americans, have made videos and they said something powerful. They said, at the end of the day, they can't tell us apart because when a white person sees us, they don't see African or Black American or Caribbean. They just see Black. And that instead of, fighting over who came from where, we should channel that same energy into becoming better versions of ourselves, into becoming the kind of people the world looks at with envy, not pity. Louis Farrakhan even buttressed that point. He said that the Black community in America should build themselves to a point where they command respect.
If you're in an FBA or ADOS cult, you can do more with your time than having genealogical pissing contests. Y'all are right-wing black folks who have nothing because your history is actively being stripped from you and your identity is wrapped into who your ancestors used to be, but not who you are. What do you have? What do you own? Please point me to the nearest FBA or ADOS hospice. Please point me to the nearest ADOS or FBA chain of grocery stores. Don't have that, huh? Are you housing our folk? Do y'all have ADOS, FBA farmland, condominium, apartment complex, a tent, something? Your divisiveness is your short-sightedness because this Black American understands that Pan-Africanism is what's going to get us liberated and free. Knowing that Malcolm X had Caribbean roots, Marcus Garvey had immigrant roots, W.E.B. Du Bois was buried in Ghana, and whether from Kwame Ture to Assata Shakur, the Black radical tradition always stood behind the Black diaspora as a whole. And oh, that red and black flag that a lot of y'all like to wear in your profile, not you because you're probably a bot. My great uncle, Robert Bobby Stewart from Elizabeth, New Jersey, made the prototype.
First thing is, why do we assume that the outer world would be able to tell the difference between an African American and an African? I mean, honestly, maybe some of us would like to think we look a lot different, but trust me, I've been to West Africa and you'd be surprised you'll see everybody's cousin over there. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have a lot of other mixtures. You know, we probably, myself, for instance, I am quite a mixture of different types of West African. Then I have some European thrown in there. A lot of us do have that. But we are embracing a concept in an attempt to say that we're different from another group of people, okay? When in fact, I think it's well known that for a lot of white people, they can't tell us apart at all. Now, I understand wanting to say, this is our culture and that's their culture. But, then again, I kind of don't understand that because we have so much of our culture that actually comes from West Africa. And please believe me, I'm an anthropologist. I've been over to West Africa. And one of the most interesting things was seeing things that we do that we literally got from there. Some of the things we do, they are literally doing the same thing.
Never allow the colonizer to turn us against our cousins in Africa, in the Caribbean, in Latin America, and all throughout the diaspora. These are our cousins. Don't allow these people to bring us into anti-African, anti-black rhetoric. Stand tall and know that you come from greatness, my fellow brothers and sisters. We are very strong people. And also recognize that until the lion tells the story, the hunter will remain the hero. Who is that hunter? The Europeans. Who is the lion? The lion represents us. All those who are of African descent. For a long time, we have allowed the colonizers to paint the picture, to paint the narrative of who and what we are. We have to take back the narrative and reclaim who and what we are and tell our own story. When it comes to people of African descent and all the various different black families scattered throughout the globe, we are like this. We are separated like fingers. We must come together like a fist and stop fighting against each other and fight against poverty, fight against corruption, fight against evil, fight against systems that try to keep us codependent on them, fight against systems that try to oppress us, turn each other against each other, that are causing the problem, but behind the scenes being the puppeteer. Take back your power.
Let's be real, the Black community in Africa and even the diaspora has never truly been united. And that division has cost us more than we realize. I think it's high time we fix that. We may have different histories to share one reality, melanin. So, if we rise together, we can rewrite how the world actually sees us, and more importantly, how we see ourselves. So, whether your roots trace back to Africa or you believe they began in America, our future depends on what we build. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you believe we can ever unite as one global Black community? I really want to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. See you in the next one.